I see no real action from this government.
Mr. Chair.
Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak today in support of the concept of an investment approach to welfare, but at a government and a societal level rather than an individual level. In the proposed welfare reforms from this government, they're missing both the big picture and the individual detail. They're trying to present the welfare reforms as new and innovative, an actuarial approach to welfare, an investment approach. But when you drill down and look at the language and the shape of the reforms, in fact, it becomes quite clear that there's not much new in this approach. Today, I'd like to focus on just one small aspect of the reforms, but a key one, that of work testing, which started with the Future Focus reforms and is now being extended. So it's work testing for women on the DPB. And I'd like to draw attention to the problem of domestic violence in this country. The nature of domestic violence, which we know affects 1 in 3 women in this country, means that its female victims are often unable to work or work in their preferred career or stay in a job long term. And international studies have shown that victims of domestic violence have 15% more chance of being jobless and a 55% more chance of being on a benefit. And international research indicates that over a third and up to a half of women on the DPB are likely to be in, or more importantly, escaping violent relationships. That's up to a half of the women on the DPB leaving violent relationships. To institute mandatory work preparedness requirements and pressure women leaving these violent relationships to go into work flies in the face of generations of work in this country to enable women to leave these violent relationships. Admittedly, Future Focus does have a work test exemption for women leaving violent relationships, and I assume this will be in place in the new reforms. But for me, this actually heightens my concern with the reforms, because it's being used as an excuse for, don't worry, we've got an exemption. And yet, this exemption is not being accessed. And when I asked the MSD officials about why such low levels were reporting in their statistics, they noted that staff don't ask. And they noted that women may not want to disclose, which is my point exactly. These reforms do not protect women. And one of the dynamics of abuse is that victims often blame themselves, and it makes disclosing difficult. If we're serious about bringing down the rates of family violence in this country and getting women off the DPB, then we need to make it as easy as possible for women and children to leave and stay away. Otherwise, we're damning women for staying and damning them for leaving. When the government talks about the decline of the numbers of women on the DPB, that's actually something we should be afraid of. We need to invest in the structural issues that lead people to need welfare. We need to invest in respectful relationship education, strengthening our response to family violence, and helping women to leave and get into sustained employment. Reducing family violence and creating jobs will get women off the DPB. In '96, economist Suzanne Snively estimated that the cost of domestic violence in New Zealand is between 1.2 and $5.8 billion a year. And more recent research in Australia estimates it's $8.1 billion a year in costs. This government, if you're serious about an economic strategy to bring us into the future, address the fundamentals. Don't blame the victim.
Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm delighted to pick up exactly on the point that Ms. Logie has just finished on, because I can